Hello, everyone. Namaste. Nice to have you here. My name is Vishwas Goel. I'm part of ads quality team, wherein we are trying to improve the quality of Google search ads. It is my privilege and honor to introduce Swami Mukundananda to us. A little introductions. Swami Mukundananda is a world-renowned leader on spirituality, yoga, meditation, and holistic health. He is an alumnus of IIT Delhi and IIM Kolkata and has been in service to the society, preaching for over 4 decades. He is a senior disciple of Jagadguru Sri Kripaluji Maharaj. As an authority on mind management, he has successfully conducted many life transformational programs across the globe in Fortune 500 companies, Ivy League universities, and many communities. His prolific writing has resulted in many best selling books, including Seven Mindsets for Success, The Science of Mind Management, and many others. His illustrations, through humorous stories and real life examples, stay with you long after you listen to them. Today, we will be learning a new technology from Swamiji, technology for mind management. This is the topic for today. We have all been working from home for the last 2 years, which has been mentally challenging for many of us. Swamiji will share practical tools and tips to empower us with better mental health. Over to you, Swamiji.
Namaste Vishwas and greetings to all the Googlers. My privilege and honor to join you all on Google Docs. So let me start off with the cockroach theory that went viral recently, and it was attributed to your famous CEO, Sundar Pichai, possibly because he used it in a speech of his. In a restaurant, some old ladies and gentlemen were sitting and enjoying their dinner when a cockroach entered through the open door of the restaurant and decided to come and sit on the shoulder of one lady. Its scary whiskers and long legs were sighted by the lady, who shrieked in fright and got up and screamed in the hope that this cockroach would fly away. Definitely, the cockroach got scared and took flight, but this time it decided to land on the nose of another gentleman. It was now his turn to shout and scream. So when he got up, the cockroach took flight again and landed on the shirt of a third gentleman. There was complete pandemonium on that table. This attracted the attention of the waiter, who came in to see what was the commotion about. In the meantime, the cockroach had taken flight yet again, and this time it landed on the tie of the waiter. The waiter, however, froze. He allowed the cockroach to feel comfortable and settle down. And then, when he saw that the cockroach was comfortably posed, he took his napkin from the back, easily caught it, and went outside the restaurant to release it in the open air. The question was, in this situation, what disturbed these elderly ladies and gentlemen? Was it the cockroach? If it was, then why did it not disturb the waiter? So Sundar Pichai concluded in his analysis that the cockroach created a distressful situation. These people, they reacted to the situation. Now, the same situation was faced by the waiter as well. However, rather than giving a knee jerk reaction, he responded in the most beneficial manner. Likewise, the pandemic has created a distressful situation all around the world. And we all have reacted or responded to it. When COVID first struck and work from home became the norm for most knowledge workers, both employers and employees saw it as a welcome relief from many things. For employers, it was a way of keeping their workers safe. They saw in it saving in infrastructure costs and freedom from many HR headaches. For employees, it was an opportunity to skip the long commute to office and the ubiquitous traffic jams, and also a welcome chance to spend quality time at home with their near and dear family members. However, after 2 years, the cracks are terribly visible. One report by Qualtrics, conducted of thousands of employees around the world, has concluded that 41.6% of employees say that over this COVID period, their mental health has declined. And a recent publication in the Harvard Business Review called Beyond Burnout states that 81% of the people interviewed feel that their overall well being has reduced during this pandemic period. So the question arises in application of the cockroach theory that do we have options on how to respond to this pandemic in a manner that we can help us sustain our mental well-being? Definitely. As the famous saying goes, life is 10% about what happens to us and 90% about how we respond to it. So the way we respond is determined by the mindsets, the attitudes that we habitually harbor within ourselves. Consider, for example, the scenario where a boss scolded his two subordinates for under par performance. Now, the boss, in his opinion, was sharing a feedback that was necessary to be given. The subordinates responded differently to that negative feedback. One started thinking how unfair, he always picks on me, he never highlights the good that I do, and he always brings out my defects, he is my worst enemy. The second subordinate responded differently. He said, I am not perfect and I definitely wish to improve. If my boss has pointed out my weaknesses, he is definitely not my enemy but my well wisher. Here's an opportunity to receive feedback about my weaknesses so that I can improve and deliver better performance in future. Now, the situation was the same for both these subordinates, but the way they responded was so different. And that was due to the difference in their mindsets. There's another famous story about the marketing manager of a shoe company who sent his two salespeople to a tribal region to assess the scope for selling shoes there. The two of them went to different areas of that region and came back with completely opposite findings. One of them said, "Sir, there is absolutely no potential for a shoe market. I did not see one person in the tribe who wears shoes." And the second person came and reported, "Sir, this is a gold mine. Oh my God, there are so many people without shoes where we have the potential of marketing shoes to them." Now, again, the situation was the same, but the response by people was so different. So what is it that creates the scope for different mindsets in different people? Well, there are two kinds of realities. One is the objective reality of the world as it is, and the second is the subjective reality of how we choose to look at the world. Many people don't realize these two realities that exist. And in their mistaken simplification, they hold their own subjective reality to be the only one. And hence, if I look on things negatively, they must definitely be negative. Now, consider this. If I ask you, what is the color of this cloth? So you may respond, it is the saffron color that monks like you wear, Swamiji. Okay, but what is the reality of saffron? If we analyze when light of 630 nanometers wavelength hits our retina, the neural reactions that it creates are interpreted by our mind. And those sensations we have learned to identify as the color saffron. However, we don't know whether the sensations within each person for the color saffron are exactly the same or not. That is why so many people are actually color blind. But in childhood, it is not discovered because when the teacher lifts up a green object and says this is green, everybody responds, yes, it is green. Only later on it is discovered that somebody is actually perceiving it as blue because of color blindness. So, likewise, there is the world, which is as it is, with its pandemics, natural calamities, with its blessings, positivities, and negativities. And there is our own perception of this world. Now, what is it that causes us to different people to perceive this world differently? That is the mind within us. The mind is our inner machinery. So let's take a deeper look at the mind. There is a huge debate on the distinction between the brain and the mind. So I'm giving you the Oriental perspective on this, that the brain is the hardware and the mind is the software. That mind utilizes the brain just as the computer software utilizes its hardware. In this case, the mind generates thoughts. Those thoughts are subtle bundles of energy. You cannot see them, but they do exist, just like the electromagnetic spectrum. These electromagnetic waves are all around us. We cannot see them with the naked eye. But if you take a radio set and start turning the knob, you start getting the stations one after the other, which indicates that the waves were present. Likewise, are these thought waves of ours. And these thoughts are impacting us in so many ways. You look at someone and say, why are you so unhappy today? How did you come to know that I'm unhappy? Your face is revealing it. So the unhappy thoughts harbored within changed the facial countenance. You look at someone else and say, this guy just doesn't seem trustworthy. I'm not willing to trust him one bit. Now, what happened? Those thoughts without integrity reflected on the face where people say that we cannot trust this guy. So these thoughts, they chisel our countenance very much like a sculptor. And the machinery that is creating these thoughts is the mind. Those thoughts, when they are repeatedly created, they generate habitual patterns which solidify as attitudes or mindsets. So, our mindsets create the perspective, the lens of which becomes the lens through which we see this world. If our lens is a negative one, we tend to view everything with pessimism, unhappiness, despondency. And there are others in the same situation with the positive lens of a healthy attitude are endowed with optimism, happiness, and hope. The philosopher John Milton, he expressed this so nicely when he said, the mind is a place of its own, and in itself can make heaven out of hell and hell out of heaven. So, such a powerful statement. We may be in the midst of the most opulent luxuries, but if our mind is agitated and disturbed, we will experience the torments of hell. And on the other hand, we may be in the most challenging and adverse circumstances. But if our mind is calm, peaceful, and joyous, we will experience the joys of heaven. That is why Franklin Roosevelt, former president of the United States, he said, men are not prisoners of fate, they are prisoners of their own mind. And the English poet Samuel Johnson, he said that to one whose mind is agitated, no amount of exercise, diet, or physics will be any use. A lot of recent research has revealed that this mind of ours even affects our physical health. There was a scientist called Stephen Wolf who did his experiment with ipecac. Ipecac is a drug that induces vomit. It is kept in chemical laboratories as a safety measure. In case someone has ingested poison, they can immediately take ipecac and vomit it out. So Dr. Wolf, he had, when pregnant ladies came to him, In the first 3 months of pregnancy, it is natural to experience symptoms of vomiting. He would give them the ipecac, and naturally the symptoms of vomit would increase. And then he would say, never mind, I've got a wonder drug that has just been released by the best pharma corporation. It's been tried on 10,000 people. Take this. And he would administer the same ipecac. However, those ladies, when their minds told them that I'm getting a wonder drug to control the vomiting sensation, would experience that the desire to vomit disappeared until the night, only to come back the next morning. When I went through this study, I was astonished that how come a placebo can stop the desire to vomit? And a little bit of research on the internet, on Google, made me realize that there is no physical vomit center in the brain. It is all triggered by thoughts in the mind, and hence the power of the placebo. In recent times, Stanford researcher Dr. Alia Crum, she did this very interesting experiment where 75-year-old gentlemen were put for 1 month in an environment where everything reminded them of 25 years ago. They were asked to talk of the president at that time. They were shown movies of that time just to make them feel that they were 50-year-olds. And after a month, when their physical checkup was done, it was discovered that their parameters had all improved as a consequence of the mindset. So, what is the importance of the mindset in mental wellness during the pandemic situation? Well, the fact is that external circumstances are not completely under our control. In fact, they are very little within our control. As we are all experiencing, we did not want the pandemic, but it came. We did not want the second wave, but it came. We did not want the third wave, but even that has come. So, individually, none of us has the power to change it. So what is in our control is our own attitude. Now, remember that attitude is an inner resource. So, this attitude, the inner resource, if we can master how to use it, we have the formula for being cheerful, irrespective of externals. And what is that formula? The understanding that life has its sweets and its sours. There is good weather and there is also bad weather. The sun rises, but then it also sets. We cannot expect that it will be spring all the year round. However, when life serves us with a lemon, the choice we have is whether we wish to feel bitter or to turn it into the lemonade. And how do people turn that lemon into a lemonade? They use this technique called positive reframing. Now, one gentleman came back home and he told, this young gentleman told his newly married wife, oh my God, I'm so blessed today. It's the luckiest day of my life. So his wife said, what happened, my dear husband? He said, you know what? The BMW? Yeah, yeah, your favorite. You love it so much. It's got smashed. Smashed? There was this crazy teenager, and he came from behind and hit me. I was standing on a red light. My dear husband, I know how much you love that BMW, and it's got smashed. You're saying it's the luckiest day of your life. The husband said, "You know what? I am safe. I've got a little scratch on my hand when we went and hit the glove case, but I don't have a single broken bone. I am just thinking I am saved from so many terrible possibilities." Here was a negative situation. And this gentleman reframed it in a positive manner. Likewise, those who are positive thinkers, they look on challenges not as obstacles, but they convert them into opportunities for growth. A piece of wood once went to a sculptor and it said, "Can you please make me beautiful?" The sculptor said, "I am ready. Are you ready?" "Yes." The sculptor took out his chisel and his tools and started hitting. The wood said, "What are you doing? It's so painful. Come on, don't do this to me." The sculptor said, "Look, if you wish to be beautiful, you will have to tolerate the pain." The wood said, "That's all right, but do it a little at a time. Just portion it out." The sculptor began again. The wood kept on complaining. The sculptor continued with his work. And at the end of 3 weeks, he had transformed it into a beautiful statue that was placed in the museum. Likewise, the positive thinkers, they say that in these difficulties, we get the opportunity to realize our shortcomings, to work on them, and develop inner strength and fortitude. So the wood became beautiful from the outside. We wish to become beautiful from the inside. And that can never happen without trying and testing circumstances. An English saying states, "A smooth sea never maketh a skillful sailor." So if we prioritize external enjoyment when it is threatened, we feel dejected. But if we change the focus and decide to prioritize our inner growth, then we naturally reframe the circumstance we are facing and continue to remain positive. So it is said that, like the changing seasons, are the changing circumstances in our life. You will never get the weather of your choice to continue. But those who have learned to manage their attitude, they always carry good weather with them. Now, how do we go beyond attitudes? Now, I am getting a little deeper into the functioning of the mind. Scientists, spiritual scientists in the East, who made their own mind as the laboratory and probed it for ages, they partitioned this mind into four things. In Sanskrit, it is called man, buddhi, chit, and ahamkar. The mind, the intellect, the subconscious mind, and the ego. What does the mind do? It creates desires. I want an ice cream. I want a cheese pizza. What does the intellect do? It analyzes. It gets its ability from the prefrontal cortex region of the brain. It ponders over what is beneficial, what is not beneficial. So, all of us have this higher self, the logical self, that can analyze what will be good for us, what will be bad for us. And then we also have this lower self, the beastly self, the animalistic self, which is the mind, the untrained mind, which seeks immediate gratification and which is averse to any kind of pain. Throughout the day, there is a struggle between the mind and the intellect. When we wake up in the morning, the mind says, "That was so enjoyable. Can I continue to sleep?" And the intellect remembers the appointment at 8 a.m. in the morning and the various works to be done. Now, if the mind wins, we continue sleeping. And if the intellect wins, then it controls the mind and we are forced to get out of bed. In this, many of us feel that our mind is not under our control. So it's a very common complaint, my mind goes into a bad mood and my mind forces me to be a compulsive thinker, etc. But the fact is, if we exert the power of our intellect, all of us in the human species have the ability to bring the mind under control. The intellect is endowed with this ability. Let me give you an example. One little child struggles with her mind. Her parents say, "Come on, you need to study." She says, "I don't like studies." Why? My mind doesn't like to study. She is lost out to her mind. But the same child, when she goes for her annual exam, year end exam, she just brings the mind under control. And for the next 2 hours, it is the questions on that paper and the best possible answers that her intellect can provide and the mind and hand can put down. She has got razor sharp focus. She doesn't look out of the window, she doesn't look at the neighbor. That kind of focus, she had the ability for it. How come it was not visible through the year and just manifested during the 2 hours of the exam? The difference was caused by the intellect. When the intellect decided these 2 hours are extremely important for me, now if I am careless, I will lose the whole year, I will fail. The intellect exerted itself to bring the mind under control. It had the ability. Through the year, if that focus had been retained, the child would have become a national level merit scholar. But the intellect had decided otherwise. Studies is not important for me. It's important for my parents. They don't know what they are talking about. When the intellect's decision was otherwise, even if she put her mind there, the intellect would pull it away. This is not interesting. Video games are more interesting. So the example reveals the power that the intellect potentially holds, which we often don't exert. So this has actually got a very interesting designation to it called Buddhi Yoga. Now, we are all familiar with physical yoga, but this is the Buddhi yoga, the yoga of the intellect. Now, that intellect, to hold the mind in check, requires good values. Like I was saying, that if your value is immediate gratification, then distressing situations will create negativity. If the value is inner growth, then distressing situations will be viewed as opportunities, as challenges and stepping stones. So we wish to install good values in our intellect, and that comes from good wisdom. So it is presented like this: Shravan, Manan, and Nididhyasan. Hear good wisdom, read it, either over Google Docs or wherever, and then ponder over it to internalize that. And finally, decide with your intellect: this is true. That will create your beliefs. Good beliefs will lead to good values, which will enable you to succeed in controlling the mind with the intellect. Now we go to a third portion of the mind, which is the subconscious. So, the conscious mind we are all aware of. I am a little uninspired today, conscious of those sentiments. I'm feeling extremely motivated. Again, it's a conscious sentiment. But the major portion of the mind we are not even conscious of. That is our subconscious, which is called the chit. So, how do we know of the existence of the chit? In the dream state. When we sleep and then start seeing dreams, the conscious mind is asleep. The senses are also at rest. Yet in our dream, we find ourselves doing funny things, flying high, traveling around the world. What in the world is going on? It is the subconscious that is churning the images, etc., within it. So, a lot of our attitudes, our behaviors are inspired into the conscious mind from the subconscious. Consider this revealing example. One little boy, when he was 3 years old, he got stuck all by himself in an elevator. Now, for 15 minutes, he was all by himself, the most harrowing experience of his little life. He was screaming and banging. And when the lights came back, the elevator moved into place, he walked out to his freedom. People hugged him. And slowly, as the days passed, his conscious mind forgot about that experience. However, it remained embedded in his subconscious. So that subconscious retains it. And whenever he's in a closed space, he experiences a fear, claustrophobia. Even he can't understand the source of it. It's coming from the subconscious. So, if we wish to really manage our mind, we need to take care of the subconscious. The conscious is the gateway to it. So, as you speak to yourself repeatedly, that is what programs our subconscious. We don't realize it, but we are constantly speaking to ourselves. Now, those thoughts could be negative ones: I'm a failure, I can never succeed. The consequence of such negative self talk is that the subconscious becomes our own worst enemy. And likewise, by positive self talk, it can be made our best friend. That is why Henry Ford was so right when he said, whether you believe that you can succeed or you believe you cannot, in either case, you are right. So, in this way, I have presented to you all a few tools for mind management. I will now move on to the second part of the program. Yes, Vishwas.
I wanted to remind everybody to put their questions on YouTube live chat. Um, s- Swamiji, I have some questions from the audience.
Yes,
Is this a good time to start asking some of those?
definitely, Vishwas. Please go ahead.
So, question one from Pavan Mukher. Please accept my obeisances, Swamiji. Thanks for taking the time for this talk. Time and again, we always hear these pearls of wisdom, which you also shared today. However, in spite of being aware and understanding of these facts about mind, we more often than o- we more often than not fail to bring this in practice. How do we break this chain and incorporate this in practice?
Yes, thank you, Pawan, for the question, which enables me to talk about another interesting feature of the mind, which is its neuroplasticity, its habit forming nature. This mind of ours is infinitely teachable. So, the way whenever we engage in any physical or mental activity, it fires the neurons in our brain. However, the brain is so intelligent that when it discovers the same set of neurons are getting fired, it creates a little software for it and stores it in the basal ganglia to make that activity easier in future. This is the habit forming nature. And that is what facilitates so many of our works. So, for example, the first day when we started typing, it was such a struggle to type the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. But then, as we continued it, slowly at the end of a year, the fingers start flying on the keyboard. How did this happen? It was the brain's habit forming nature. The same happens with our behaviors as well. If you came from office, sat down on your living room couch, put on the TV and thought it'd be good to enjoy a coffee. Relishing the coffee gave a little gratification. When you did this for 10 days, the brain created a habit loop. So every time when you sit in front of the TV, that is the trigger, and the response is desire for coffee. When you gratify it, the pleasure is the reward that reinforces the loop. So, in this way, we create a variety of habits. Now, these habits, they grip us for better or for worse. The habits don't care whether they were established for our benefit or detriment. They can be compared to the macros on an Excel sheet. So if you put a macro on a cell, it will do its work. If the macros are good, you'll get a proper Excel sheet, or it'll be all messed up. Likewise, when you hear talks like these, you get inspired for self improvement, for life transformation. But until you practice those activities again and again, until they reach the point of habit, it becomes very difficult. So, the missing link out here is sufficient practice of a particular thought process. that will create the corresponding habit within you.
Thank you, Swamiji. Uh, Next question is from Gaurav Kulshrestha. Gaurav's question is, how can we use the disturbance created by the pandemic, work from home environment, to benefit our life?
Yes, so this is an example of positive reframing. So uh, make a list of all the ways that the work from home has worked to your advantage. First of all, it has saved on your commute time. Secondly, it has saved you from the traffic jams. Thirdly, it has given you an opportunity to be with your near and dear ones. Fourthly, it has provided you with a little bit of freedom in how do you set up your day. So all of these can work to your advantage. As I go around the world and I ask people that how did this work out for you? I get responses on both sides. There are those who say that we have been shattered, we are miserable, not just because of economic reasons, because of attitudes, as I see. And there are others who say, you know what? I was running and running and running. And this was like the pause button, which gave me the opportunity to turn inwards, to reassess my values, and focus a little bit on inner growth, which I was missing out in all this running. So that's just a few of the ways that you can utilize this pandemic situation to your benefit.
Thank you, Swamiji. Question number three is from Purushottam Diwangan. Dear Swamiji, Pranam, I'm invariably sad all the time because I'm always anxious about my work, my future. I seem never to enjoy life. I want to break this mental framework.
Okay, Purushottam, it's again, think of it. Millions of people around the world would give anything to be employed at Google. They, they would consider it the highest privilege. And yet, if you survey the Googlers, how many of them feel gratitude for the opportunity that they have? So that is our human nature. We do not count the blessings we have received, but we are always focused on what we do not have. And no matter where we are in the hierarchy, there's always somebody ahead of us. And that comparison makes us feel stressed out. So, the way to break out of this cycle is to remember the privileges that you possess. There was one husband and wife who would always curse circumstances. You know, our classmates, they are doing so well, and we've got this simple job, and there's so much lack in our life. They were living in a condominium while many of their friends were living in townhouses, some had even reached bungalows. Now they felt they had their whole list of complaints until one day that person lost his job. And now he didn't have the money to pay the mortgage for his home. After a month, he received a notice from the bank, if you don't pay the next installment by this date, we'll foreclose. They now realized that it was the possibility they could be out in the street. So they were so distressed until just a few days before that deadline, he got an offer for a job in his mail. He said, wow, I'm so fortunate. I'm so blessed to have this home. The home was there before as well, but he was not seeing it as a blessing. So always look below you and be thankful for everything in your life, the air that you breathe, the sunlight that you receive. And don't stress about getting to the next class. Rather focus on putting in your best efforts. Focus on the efforts, not on the results.
Thank you, Swamiji. Swamiji, next question is from Tarun Malhotra. Thank you for enlightening us. We are not so powerful that our intellect can control 100% of mind. We love movies, pizzas, singing, theater. How do we balance?
Yes. So now it's very easy to realize the consequences. You love movies, which is fine. But if you are get addicted to movies, that is bad. You love pizzas to the extent that if you have a pizza party once in a week, it is okay. But then if you are having it every day, then beware of the consequences. So your question is how to balance it. A little bit of wisdom will help strengthen the intellect. In this case, the wisdom I'd like to share with you is this: Shreya and prayer. There are two kinds of happiness. One happiness which is so sweet in the present, and later on it seems to turn into poison. And the other kind of happiness is apparently bitter in the present, but later on it turns so sweet. So when we want to enjoy the third ice cream, it may be enjoyable, but later on it will give us untold distress in the form of diabetes and cholesterol. And when we force ourselves to exercise the minimum of 150 minutes a week, the mind and the body may complain, but the benefits of good health and longevity are there for all to see. Now, you have to reinforce your intellect's conviction towards Shreya. The Greeks put it as hedonia and eudaimonia. Hedonia is immediate pleasure, anything that gratifies my senses. Eudaimonia is the sense of inner fulfillment. Now, gratification of the senses is evanescent, it's here and it's gone. If you enjoyed something yesterday, it's gone today. Now you need it again and then again. And eudaimonia lasts, the inner fulfillment. That comes from being good, from doing good, and thereby feeling good.
Thank you, Swamiji. Um, Swamiji, next question is from Smita. Smita is asking, how do we handle, Pranam Swamiji, how do we handle situations and people who take our positive, kind, empathetic attitude and keep causing difficult situations for us? How do we deal with such people and situations?
Yes, that is a practical problem in this world because not everyone is perfect. So you may be behaving well, but the others, you cannot expect that they will also behave well. Somebody said that to hope that nobody does bad to me because I'm a good person is like hoping that the mad bull is not going to charge at me because I'm a vegetarian. The bull doesn't care. And likewise, the people of the world also don't care. So, in this situation, remember one thing: anybody can just say unpleasant things, but how you respond, the thoughts that you harbor in yourself, is always a choice that you make. Nobody can force you to become negative. One husband and wife who were working in the USA, and then they returned to India for their annual vacation. And as it happens, there were so many relatives around. So the husband had three sisters. Two of them were very cordial, and the third was rude and impolite with his wife. So the wife would keep on complaining to her husband that, you know what, your sister said this to me, she did that to me. One day the husband said, look, my dear, I accept she is what she is, but I cannot control her. But you decide that I will not let her hurt me. So when we adopt this attitude that I will control my responses, we will discover that in people's hurtful statements lies an opportunity for inner growth like nothing else. That is why Tulsidas, one ancient Indian writer, he said, Nindak niyare rakhiye angan kuti chabai, nit sabun pani bina nirmal kare subhai. If you are really serious about cleansing your mind, find a critic, somebody who is truly vituperative, and place him in your house. Adorn him with a tilak mark. Let him go on criticizing. You just keep bearing it. Without soap and water, you will find your mind is cleansed. Take that in a positive light.
Thank you, Swamiji. Very insightful. Next question, Swamiji. In an environment with blurred boundaries, everything at home and everything at work seems important and urgent. How can I build focus in an environment with so much happening simultaneously?
Yes, that is the problem when working from home. Now, earlier on, it was very clear boundaries. When you were in office, then you could completely focus on it. And now, when home has become the office, so home and office are side by side. So the distractions have increased. And the problem with that is that home encroaches onto office. During office time, you're doing homework, and office encroaches onto work, onto home. So the time which is meant for the family, you're dedicating it for office work. And that results in the broken focus syndrome, which is already there because of the excessive uh, information that the media is providing to us, and work for home is not helping in that. So realize this problem with this situation, and wherever possible, create some boundaries. This is the shut off time for office work, no matter what. And if possible, if your office is in a separate room, as far as possible, keep it in a separate location. Then shut the door. Okay, office is closed until the next morning. That way, you create a physical barrier there. So beyond that, this focus is a very important ability. Focus is the ability to hold the beam of our attention on the object of our choice. So, the quality, intensity of our focus, and the object we choose to focus upon, they factually determine the richness of our life. That is why it is in our best interest to keep on building our focus. So, what works against focus is the nature of our prefrontal cortex for constant stimulation. It has a built in novelty bias. And that is why it gets bored of one thing, then wants to move to the next thing, then it gets bored, then wants to move to the next thing. And researchers have discovered that an average sedentary worker goes through 540 computer screens in a day. That's without adding the social media to it. So it's the amount of stimulation that is happening. Now, that does not help. It means that every 40 seconds, we are changing our focus. If we wish to do quality work, then we need to change this situation. And we will have to work against this nature of the prefrontal cortex, its novelty bias, by exercising our willpower. That means no matter how boring it is, I choose to stick with this work. No matter how gratifying it is to see the likes that have come on my post, I will not see it until 7 p.m. So, as we keep on exercising with our willpower, it's amazing. Building muscles is difficult. Building the muscles of your brain, mind, and intellect is far easier through these exercises.
Thank you, Swamiji. I'll take the last question, Swamiji. This is a question from Vandana Roy. Namaskaram, Swamiji. Is being conscious and doing activities consciously the key to happiness in daily life as well as the key to open the spiritual dimensions?
Yes, Vandana, that's a very nice question. Definitely, being conscious and doing activities is important. It goes back to the first story from where I began. We people, we involuntarily react to situations. These are the knee jerk reactions. Somebody said a harsh statement, immediately we become angry. So if we bring more consciousness to it, we become okay, somebody has said this. Now let me hold my horses and then choose the best possible response. So if we are not conscious, we don't realize the gap between the mind and the external world. So the external situations hold the key to our mind. People's behaviors make us happy or sad. And becoming conscious and mindful in our activities opens up that gap, which opens up possibilities. Okay, the pandemic is there, it's a distressful situation. What should be my response? Should I, my mind is creating unhappy feelings? I will not accept them. So it enables us to bring the mind under our control.
Thank you, Swamiji. We are at time. Unfortunately, we have to bring this conversation to an end. This has been an enlightening conversation. Many of us at Google learned something new today. I highly recommend everyone to read your books, especially The Science of Mind Management, and watch your lectures on YouTube. Swamiji, on a personal note, I have been following you and your work for last few years, and it has significantly impacted my experience of life. You have been a true leader, a saint, and one of the God's greatest gifts to humanity. I would like to sincerely thank you for taking the time to guide us on this very prominent and relevant topic of technology for mind management. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vishwas. It was a pleasure being with you on this program and a pleasure speaking to all the Googlers via Talks on Google.